He thought he fired one. 22 walked out.
I've endured plenty of meaningless corporate gatherings where executives throw around buzzwords like synergy while everyone pretends they're not dying inside. But this particular Tuesday morning session was something else entirely. The kind of disaster that becomes an unbelievable cautionary tale. The conference room reeked of excessive cologne mixed with expensive leather and inflated egos. I sat reviewing quarterly reports I'd perfected until 2 a.m. when Gerald Bradford, my father-in-law and CEO, made his dramatic entrance. His face already displayed that dangerous shade of crimson that signaled impending chaos. He didn't ease into anything. Gerald slammed his hand on the mahogany table hard enough to leave psychological damage and barked, "You've got 5 minutes to clear out your desk." 5 minutes. Like I was some intern who'd accidentally sent confidential data company-wide, not someone who'd spent 6 years building the infrastructure keeping this place operational. The silence hit like a physical force. 12 executives froze mid-motion while someone's coffee cup clinked against a saucer like a gunshot. I could practically hear everyone calculating whether to look at me or away. Here's what I didn't do: argue, defend myself, or beg. I'd watched too many people scramble for dignity while it slipped away. Instead, I smiled, a small, knowing smile that said, "You have no idea what you've started." I stood slowly and began packing methodically. My quarterly report showing 340% efficiency increases, project plans mapping 3 years of development, team evaluations proving every person in my department exceeded expectations. Gerald stood there like a peacock displaying feathers, clearly expecting me to crumble. When I finished packing, I turned to face him directly and said 2 quiet words. "Thank you." The silence somehow intensified. Executives blinked in confusion. Trying to process why someone just fired was expressing gratitude. Gerald's smirk widened. He thought he'd won. He had absolutely no comprehension that my thank you wasn't for the job I'd lost, but for the freedom I'd gained, or that his witnesses and lack of proper procedure had just handed me a legal nuclear weapon. As I walked toward the door, some of the sharper executives looked concerned. Lisa Thompson from legal looked like she'd witnessed a slow-motion car crash. Kevin Wu from finance had gone pale. They knew firing your chief technical officer publicly without proper documentation wasn't just bad form. It was a legal disaster with a short fuse. I wish I could say I'd orchestrated what happened next, but honestly, I was just trying to reach the elevator before my composure cracked. 20 feet down the hallway, I heard it, chairs squeaking, multiple footsteps, following me. I turned around. Nathan Kim was first. Senior engineer, brilliant developer. He had his laptop bag over his shoulder and security badge in hand. He caught my eye and nodded. Behind him came Maya Rodriguez, our lead data scientist who'd turned down Google and Amazon offers. Then came Jordan Hayes, our systems architect. And they kept coming. Within minutes, 22 people were following me down that hallway. 22 colleagues, friends, people I'd hired and trained. The squeaking chairs became a chorus announcing each defection. People who weren't even in my department stopped working to watch, mouths hanging open. Through the glass walls, I saw Gerald and the executives scrambling to the windows. Gerald's expression journeyed through confusion, disbelief, then a forced chuckle that screamed, "I've made a terrible mistake." "Let them go," he announced dismissively. "Dead weight." 22 of the most talented people in the company, the ones who actually understood how systems worked, who held institutional knowledge, dead weight. Lisa Thompson turned what I can only describe as, "Oh crap, white." Kevin Wu looked like his mental calculations weren't producing good numbers. Even Anderson from operations, usually unflappable, had his hand on his forehead. We walked in this solemn procession past the reception desk where Olivia stared open-mouthed. "Have a good day, Olivia," I said pleasantly. Somehow we all fit in the elevator. Someone started humming the Great Escape theme. Nervous, exhilarated laughter filled the cramped space. "Anyone have a plan?" Nathan asked as we descended. "Working on it," I said with more confidence than I felt. Later, I learned that Lisa had literally choked on her green smoothie watching us leave. She'd slammed her folder and snapped, "Call a lawyer, now!" Gerald's face apparently went through an entire emotional journey in 3 seconds. Lisa speedwalked to HR in her heels, burst through the doors, and demanded, "Pull Derek Harrison's employment contract now, and the severance calculation spreadsheet. And someone tell me someone documented proper protocol before he was fired." The silence was deafening. Nobody had checked because the CEO made a decision, And everyone fell in line. My contract had a clause my lawyer insisted on 6 years ago. Standard severance if terminated without cause, but if terminated in a manner considered humiliating or damaging to professional reputation, the severance multiplied significantly. What's more humiliating than being told you have 5 minutes in front of 12 witnesses? Lisa read the clause 3 times, progressively paler. Then she ran the severance calculations. How much? Gerald asked, finally sounding worried. Best case scenario, assuming he doesn't sue for additional damages, $640,000 plus full benefits for 18 months, plus immediate stock option vesting, plus a mutual non-disparagement agreement. And honestly, I'd recommend we don't say anything about him at all. The number hung in the air. Lisa continued. Worst case, he lawyers up and sues for wrongful termination, hostile work environment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and reputation damage. We have 12 witnesses who saw you humiliate him. We have 22 employees who walked out as evidence of culture problems. Plus, social media, this is probably already spreading. She wasn't wrong. My phone was already buzzing. Plus, Lisa continued, those 22 employees who walked out, if they claim constructive discharge, we could face 22 separate legal actions. Kevin Wu actually had to sit down during this conversation. But he said thank you, Gerald protested weakly. Doesn't that show he accepted it gracefully? Lisa laughed, not a happy laugh. That shows he's smart enough not to lose his temper in front of witnesses, which makes him more credible. A judge will see a man who kept composure during humiliating public termination, then see the CEO who created that situation. Guess which looks more sympathetic? The boardroom had transformed from triumphant efficiency to legal disaster in 15 minutes. Executives were already making excuses to flee. What do we do? Gerald asked quietly. Lisa straightened her suit. We call our insurance company, activate our directors and officers' liability policy, and pray. Then call your personal attorney. Then draft a generous severance offer and hope he takes it before talking to his own lawyers. She paused at the door. And Gerald, next time you want to fire someone for dramatic effect, run it by legal first. Standing in the parking lot with 22 other suddenly unemployed people, we experienced that weird moment where you can't tell if you're having a breakdown or the best day of your life. Carlos from facilities started clapping. About damn time someone stood up to that idiot. I've watched him treat people like garbage for years. Ashley from the mailroom joined in. He made me cry in front of the entire shipping department last month. More people emerged. Security guards, admin assistants. Someone whistled. Eddie the janitor raised his mop like a revolutionary flag. Solidarity! He yelled. I started laughing. Genuine, full-belly laughter releasing 6 years of accumulated stress. I wasn't humiliated, I said aloud. I'm a legend. Damn right you are, Carlos confirmed, still clapping. My phone started its seizure of notifications. By the time we reached McDonald's, it sounded like a microwave full of forks. The Titan Systems Slack workspace was having a complete meltdown. 247 unread messages in 30 minutes. Did Harrison really just quit? Not quit. Fired, in front of everyone. 22 people walked out. That's illegal, right? Lisa from legal is losing it upstairs. Someone had created a channel called Exodus Watch. The engineering channel flooded with people trying to figure out who was left to fix things when they inevitably broke. My personal messages exploded with former colleagues, competitors who'd tried recruiting me, even vendors. A VP sent, I heard, wow, followed by 3 fire emojis. Then came an email from a venture capital firm partner. Heard about your departure. 22 people is a ready-made team. If you're starting something new, we should talk. We move fast. Maya checked her phone. This guy is legit. Summit Ventures. They funded 3 unicorns in 2 years. He thinks you accidentally created a startup. I didn't create a startup, I protested. I got fired and people felt bad. That's not what this looks like from outside, Nathan said. This looks like you staged a dramatic walkout, convinced 22 talented people to follow you, and you're probably starting a competitor. My LinkedIn exploded. Connection requests from strangers, recruiter messages, journalists asking for comments. One message from Patrick Chen, CTO of a major tech company. Coffee this week. I think we should talk. Someone created a WhatsApp group called The Dead Weight with a weights emoji, including all 22 of us. Ahmed from infrastructure typed, so anyone got a plan? Or are we all just vibing into unemployment? The messages spiraled, 22 people processing life choices through jokes. Then Jessica from integration sent, my friend in HR just texted, Gerald is in an emergency meeting with legal trying to figure out costs. Lisa is pissed. My phone buzzed with more emails, a lawyer offering services, a business consultant, a commercial real estate agent advertising creative office spaces. One subject line made me laugh. Heard about the 5-minute deadline? Let's talk about your 5-year plan. Pulling into my driveway mid-workday carried that specific dread of knowing I'd have to explain sudden unemployment to my wife, Rebecca. Her car was there, of course. I sat in my car for 3 solid minutes, staring at our front door. Inside, Rebecca was at the dining table, surrounded by her digital marketing equipment. She looked up when I entered, her expression cycling through surprise, confusion, concern. "Hey," she said carefully, "you're home early." "Yeah, funny story. Your dad fired me today." I watched her face flip through emotional responses like a Rolodex. "He what?" "Fired me in front of the entire executive board. Gave me 5 minutes to clear my desk like I was an intern caught stealing supplies. Very dramatic, very public, very illegal, according to Lisa from legal." Rebecca set down her drink and rubbed her temples. "Okay, I'm sure there's more to this. My dad wouldn't just—" 22 people walked out with me, I continued. Just stood up and left. We're all unemployed now. The parking lot janitor saluted me with his mop, very inspirational. She was quiet, doing mental calculations. This was the problem with marrying the boss's daughter. Every work conflict automatically became family conflict. "I'm sure he didn't mean it personally," she finally said. I laughed bitterly. "Not personally, Rebecca. He told me to clear my desk in front of 12 executives after 6 years of making him look good. Not personally, right?" "He's been under stress," she tried. "The board has been pushing, and firing his son-in-law in the most humiliating way possible seemed like solid stress management?" She sighed, that long-suffering sigh. "Look, I'll talk to him. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding." "Rebecca, my contract has a very specific severance clause about what happens when someone fires me in a humiliating public manner. Your dad is about to learn the expensive way that lawyers read contracts, even if CEOs don't." Her eyes widened. "Your contract has a severance clause?" $640,000 minimum. That's if they pay quietly. More if they drag it out and I sue. "For your dad? He's about to have an uncomfortable conversation with the board about how he lost critical technical staff, triggered massive severance payout, and tanked investor confidence, all in one morning." $600,000? She looked shocked. "Bare minimum. But between you and me, I'm not signing anything quietly. Your dad gave me 5 minutes. I'm giving him a 5-year countdown to bankruptcy." "That's very dramatic," she said, her voice edging with seriousness. "Your dad specializes in drama. I'm just matching his energy." We sat in silence. My phone buzzed continuously in my bag. "I need you to understand something," I said finally. "Your dad didn't just fire an employee. He fired the person who understood how technical infrastructure works, who trained the team that walked out, who'd been covering for his bad decisions for 6 years. He didn't fire a problem. He fired the solution." She picked up her phone, probably to text her family. "He's still my father." "I know, and I'm still your husband, so you get to navigate that conflict. But here's the thing, I'm not the one who created this problem. He fired me. He made this mess." My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 3 seconds later, another call. "Popular guy," Rebecca said. "Apparently unemployment looks good on me. VCs want to fund whatever I do next. Recruiters want to place me. Journalists want to interview me. Your dad's competitors probably want to hire me just to piss him off." "Are you enjoying this?" she asked with genuine confusion. Was I? I took a moment to think. "Yeah," I said honestly. "I think I am." She looked at me like she was seeing someone she didn't recognize, which was fair. I didn't quite recognize myself either. My phone rang again. This time it was Nathan. "I need to take this," I said. "Of course you do," Rebecca replied, turning back to her laptop. I walked outside to answer. Sometimes family dinners are just going to be awkward. Might as well embrace it. Within 4 hours, the investor meltdown began. Kevin Wu from finance sent what he thought was a discreet email about personnel changes affecting quarterly projections to his board contact. Except Kevin couldn't just say, "We might have a problem." He had to quantify it with numbers and graphs showing projected revenue impact. The email got forwarded, then screenshot and posted in a private investor's Slack channel. By Wednesday morning, investors were storming Gerald's office. According to my sources, and I had multiple sources because everyone still employed wanted to keep me updated, the glass-walled conference rooms filled with men in expensive suits gesticulating wildly while Gerald looked like he'd realized his parachute was actually a backpack full of bricks. The investors had three concerns. Where was the core technical team? Who would maintain infrastructure? What the hell was Gerald thinking? Gerald tried his usual bravado. Gentlemen, I understand your concerns, but I assure you this is simply a restructuring opportunity. We're eliminating dead weight. Diane Foster, a board member who'd made her fortune in enterprise software, interrupted. Gerald, you didn't eliminate dead weight. You eliminated the 22 people who actually understood how your platform works. That's not restructuring. That's amputation without anesthesia. We can replace them, Gerald protested. The talent market is full of qualified candidates. Younger, hungrier, cheaper. Cheaper, Samuel Lee, another board member, spoke up. We're not running a lemonade stand. You can't swap out senior engineers like interchangeable parts. These people had institutional knowledge. They understood the architecture. We have documentation, Gerald said. Show me the documentation, Diane challenged. Gerald couldn't because documentation was scattered across 7 platforms, half outdated, and the important stuff lived in people's heads, specifically the heads of people who just left. What about Harrison? Can we bring him back? Someone asked. The room went quiet. Gerald's face twisted. Absolutely not. I won't be held hostage by an employee's ego. The irony wasn't lost on board members. Gerald, Diane said slowly, you fired him in front of witnesses. You humiliated him publicly. You triggered a substantial severance package. Then 22 employees walked out in solidarity. That's not his ego. That's your ego creating a $640,000 problem with a mass exodus chaser. Samuel Lee pulled up his tablet. I'm looking at our quarterly projections. These were built on deliverables from teams that no longer exist. Someone want to tell me how we're hitting these numbers now? More silence, the kind that happens when everyone realizes simultaneously they're screwed. We'll adjust the projections, Gerald said weakly. Adjust them to what? Diane asked. To, we hope replacement employees we haven't hired yet match the productivity of experienced teams we just lost? That's not a projection, Gerald. That's a prayer. The meeting went on for 3 more hours. Investors systematically dismantling every assumption Gerald made about functioning without us. By the end, the board gave Gerald a fix this or start updating your LinkedIn ultimatum. How does one fix this? Gerald asked, sounding lost. You could start, Diane said, by calling Harrison, apologizing, offering his job back with substantial raise and executive seat, and hoping he doesn't laugh in your face. I can't do that, Gerald said. Then I hope you have a backup plan, Samuel replied, because I'm looking at our stock price right now. We're down 7% since this morning. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Mr. Harrison, this is Victoria Martinez from Pinnacle Capital. We're primary investors in Titan Systems. I was wondering if you had time for a frank conversation about your future plans, specifically whether those plans include starting a competing company, because if they do, we'd like to discuss moving our investment portfolio accordingly. Gerald was in his office being grilled by investors while his own investors were calling me asking if they should abandon ship and fund whatever I did next. I think I do have time for that conversation, I said. Gerald's lawyers finally called Friday, 5 days after the firing. 5 days during which I'd received 73 calls from interested parties, started conversations with 3 VC firms, and watched Titan Systems stock nosedive. Mr. Harrison, this is Thomas Garrett from Garrett & Associates. We represent Titan Systems in legal matters. Of course you do, I said, sipping coffee. Let me guess. Gerald finally realized he stepped on a landmine, and you're the poor fool who has to defuse it. Long pause. We'd like to discuss a resolution to the recent situation. Situation? I repeated. Is that what we're calling your client publicly firing me in front of witnesses and triggering a severance clause he didn't bother reading? Another pause. Mr. Harrison, I understand you may feel some frustration. Frustration? I interrupted. Interesting word choice. You know what else is interesting? It took 5 days to call me. 5 days during which your client hemorrhaged employees, investors, and credibility. 5 days during which I talked to my own lawyer who used words like textbook case and slam dunk. Papers rustling. Thomas was losing control of the conversation. We're prepared to offer you a severance package, a generous one, in exchange for signing mutual non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreements. How generous? $640,000 plus 18 months benefits, continuation plus immediate stock option vesting. It's very fair. Fair, I said. Fair would have been not firing me in front of 12 witnesses. Fair would have been following proper termination procedures. Fair would have been your client not calling 22 people dead weight while his company fell apart. Mr. Harrison, let me finish. You want to know what I think is fair? I think it's fair that your client is currently stress-eating antacids watching his stock price nosedive. I think it's fair that investors are calling me, asking if they should fund whatever I do next. I think it's fair that the 22 people who walked out are fielding job offers, while Gerald tries hiring replacements. Beautiful silence. $640,000 is what the contract says I get automatically. That's not an offer. That's the baseline, the starting point. Mr. Harrison, I don't think you understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. You want this to go quietly. You want me to sign papers saying I won't talk. You want me to disappear so Gerald can pretend this was minor personnel adjustment instead of catastrophic leadership failure. Here's what I don't understand. Why would I sign anything? Why would I take your baseline offer when I could sue for additional damages, start a competing company with his former employees and nervous investors' money, or just wait and watch his company implode while I field offers from competitors? Thomas made a sound between a cough and suppressed scream. Mr. Harrison, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm unemployed. There's a difference. Upset implies emotional investment. I'm just a guy who got fired, watched 22 people follow him out, and is now getting calls from investors wanting to fund his next venture. That's not upset. That's liberated. Your wife is Mr. Bradford's daughter, Thomas said, changing tactics. Surely you want to resolve this amicably for family reasons. I laughed. Let me tell you about family reasons. My wife spent 5 days trying to convince me her father didn't mean it personally when he publicly humiliated me. Family reasons are exactly why I'm not interested in making this easy for Gerald. Are you saying you're divorcing your wife? I'm saying using my marriage as emotional blackmail isn't the brilliant negotiation strategy you think it is. More paper rustling. What would it take for you to accept the severance package and sign agreements? I took another sip of coffee. You want to know what it would take? Your client fired me in surround sound. 12 executives heard him. Then 22 employees walked out. The parking lot janitor saluted me with a mop. That's 12 witnesses, plus 22 more, plus general awesomeness. Do you understand what you're dealing with? I understand there are complications. Complications, I interrupted. Your client created a legal disaster so comprehensive it could be a case study in what not to do. I've had 3 employment lawyers reach out offering pro bono work just for publicity. Pro bono. Do you know how bad you have to screw up for lawyers to work for free? Thomas sighed. The sigh of someone whose Friday just got significantly worse. What do you want? I want Gerald to understand that you can't treat people like disposable assets and expect them to quietly disappear. I want him to understand actions have consequences. I want him to understand the 22 people he called dead weight were actually load-bearing walls. Pause. That's not a negotiable request. No, but you asked what I wanted. I paused. Here's what I'll actually accept. Double the severance. $1.28 million. No non-disparagement clause. I'll agree not to actively trash talk, but I'm not promising silence if asked about my experience. No NDA. What happened was public. You can't unring that bell. And a written apology from Gerald, acknowledging the termination was handled inappropriately. Silence stretched so long I thought the call dropped. That's not a reasonable counteroffer, Thomas finally said. Sure it is. It's completely reasonable compared to what I could get if I sue. My lawyer estimated $2 million in wrongful termination plus damages plus legal fees. So $1.28 million with no trial, no publicity, no drawn-out battle. That's a bargain. That's me being generous because it's Friday and I'm in a good mood. I'll have to discuss this with my client. Take your time. Every day Gerald waits is another day his stock drops. Employees jump ship. Investors lose confidence. I'm unemployed. I've got nothing but time. Meanwhile, he's watching his empire crumble. Different pressure situations. Mr. Harrison, I strongly encourage you to reconsider... Thomas, I interrupted. Can I call you Thomas? Your client gave me 5 minutes to clear out. I gave him a 5-year countdown to bankruptcy. We're already at day 5 and he's not looking great. Maybe you should encourage him to take the deal before the countdown gets shorter. I hung up before he could respond and texted Nathan. Gerald's lawyers just called. They sound like they've been dragged through gravel. His response, please tell me you made them cry. Not cry, but definitely regret their career choices. Within a week, we had office space, a dingy warehouse in the industrial district that smelled like old pizza and broken dreams. Lights flickered, bathroom door didn't lock, mysterious carpet stain nobody investigated. But it had heart. Character. Significantly cheaper rent than the business district. The 22 who'd followed me weren't just co-workers anymore. They were co-founders. Partners. We stood in that warehouse Monday morning looking at flickering lights. This is either the best decision we've ever made or we're all living in our parents' basements by Christmas, Jordan said. Why not both? Maya replied. Everyone laughed. We called ourselves Forge Dynamics. The name came from a late-night brainstorming session with cheap beer and intoxicating possibility. Forge, building something new, something better. Dynamics, because we were dynamic, adaptive, not stuck in old corporate rigidity. Our slogan, we don't fire family in 5 minutes. Nathan designed a logo on his laptop while sitting on a folding chair, a hammer striking an anvil with sparks flying upward. Cliché. Absolutely. But it looked good on business cards Maya ordered before we even had business. Victoria Martinez from Pinnacle Capital fast-tracked our funding application after hearing about my phone negotiation with Gerald's lawyer, which had somehow leaked. We had our first term sheet within 72 hours. First check cleared by week's end. $2 million in seed funding. Not bad for 23 unemployed people and a warehouse with questionable wiring. Is this real? Sarah asked, staring at the funding confirmation. It's real, I confirmed. We're actually doing this. We had contracts before officially opening. Turns out when you fire your entire technical team, clients dependent on that team start looking for alternatives. When those alternatives include the exact same people just under a different company name, well, that's seamless transition. 3 of Titan Systems' biggest clients reached out within the first week, not to Titan Systems, to us, to Forge Dynamics. They'd heard through the tech industry grapevine that we were starting fresh and wanted in before Gerald's company completely imploded. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving. In a warehouse that smelled like regret and ambition. 2 weeks. That's all it took for headlines to start rolling in like a tsunami of schadenfreude. Titan Systems implodes after mass walkout. Tech company loses core team, stock plummets 40%. CEO's 5-minute firing triggers corporate exodus. My personal favorite from TechCrunch, How to Destroy Your Company in 5 Minutes, a case study. The stock didn't just drop, it plummeted, nosedived. Financial analysts started using phrases like catastrophic loss of investor confidence and systemic leadership failure. 40% in 2 weeks. But the stock price was just the opening act. The real show was the lawsuits. Plural, multiple, a parade of legal actions. Shareholders filed class action for mismanagement. 3 major clients sued for breach of contract. 2 former employees Gerald had previously fired came forward with their own wrongful termination claims. And my lawsuit? Well, not quite. Gerald's lawyers had countered my $1.28 million demand with $900,000, looking physically pained doing it. I accepted, not because I needed to be generous, but because watching Gerald write that check was more satisfying than dragging it out. The press conference happened Thursday, 2 weeks and 3 days after the 5-minute deadline. I stood on a small stage in our cleaned-up warehouse, flanked by my 22 co-founders. Local tech media showed up. So did national outlets, Bloomberg, Forbes, Wall Street Journal. Gerald was having his own press conference at the same time. His PR team insisted he address the situation publicly, control the narrative, reassure investors everything was fine. Good afternoon, I said. Camera flashes popped. My name is Derek Harrison, and 2 weeks ago, I was fired from Titan Systems. I was given 5 minutes to pack up 6 years of my career. It was humiliating. It was public. And, according to multiple employment lawyers, it was very illegal. Some people laughed. Others typed frantically. But I'm not here to talk about what happened. I'm here to talk about what happens next. I gestured behind me. These are the 22 people who walked out with me that day. They didn't have to. They had mortgages, families, student loans. They left anyway because they believed in something more important than job security. Loyalty, respect, the idea that people shouldn't be treated like disposable assets. I paused. Today I'm proud to announce Forge Dynamics. We're not just a company, we're a statement that says you can't fire your way to success. You can't humiliate people and expect them to quietly disappear. You can't call 22 talented individuals dead weight and expect your company to keep standing. More camera flashes. We've secured $2 million in seed funding. We've signed contracts with 3 major clients. Clients who, coincidentally, used to work with Titan Systems. We're hiring, growing, doing it all in a warehouse that smells like old pizza, but has more heart than any glass tower ever could. The crowd was engaged. I looked directly into the nearest camera. To the man who gave me 5 minutes to clear out, thank you. That's all I needed. 5 minutes to realize I was working for the wrong company. 5 minutes to discover 22 people valued integrity over paychecks. 5 minutes to start something better. The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed like strobes. Reporters shouted questions. Meanwhile, across town, Gerald was sweating through his own press conference, trying to blame everything on restructuring challenges and personnel disagreements. He tried spinning it as opportunity for fresh talent and new directions. He even suggested my departure was mutual and amicable. Nobody bought it, not with the stock price speaking louder than his statements, not with lawsuits piling up, not with his former employees holding a competing press conference looking happy, funded, and successful, while he looked like someone watching his legacy circle the drain. Questions from his conference apparently got brutal. Is it true you called your former employees deadweight? Can you explain why 22 people left simultaneously? How do you respond to claims your company can't function without the technical team? Gerald stammered through answers that satisfied nobody, made excuses that convinced no one. By Friday, the board called an emergency meeting. By Monday, Gerald Bradford was no longer CEO of Titan Systems. The official statement said he was stepping down to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for, "We fired him before he destroyed what's left." The irony was delicious. The man who'd fired me in 5 minutes had just been fired himself. Except it took the board 3 hours of deliberation and significantly more paperwork. I was sitting in my warehouse office when the news broke. Nathan burst in waving his phone. "He's out! The board fired him!" The entire office erupted in cheers. Someone popped cheap champagne and suddenly we were celebrating. My phone rang. Rebecca. I stepped outside. "You heard," she said. Not a question. I heard. Silence. Then, "Are you happy?" I thought about it. "I'm satisfied. There's a difference." "He's devastated," she said quietly. "He devastated himself. I didn't fire him. The board did. His investors did. His own decisions did. I just existed and built something better." Another pause. "My mother wants to know if you're coming to Sunday dinner." I laughed at the absurdity. "Is your father going to be there?" "Probably." "Then probably not, at least not for a while. Maybe when he's ready to actually apologize, not the corporate, 'I'm sorry you felt that way,' non-apology." "That might be a long time," Rebecca said. "I've got time. I'm an entrepreneur now. I make my own schedule." I could hear her smile. "You sound different." "I am different. Unemployment looks good on me." I stood outside my warehouse listening to my team celebrate, thinking about how 5 minutes had changed everything. 5 minutes had ended my career. 5 minutes had started a company. 5 minutes had proven the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. "Congratulations on Forge Dynamics. When you're ready to scale, call me. Diane Foster." Even Gerald's own board members were reaching out now. I walked back inside, back to the celebration. Someone handed me a plastic cup of cheap champagne. Jordan raised his cup. "To Gerald Bradford, for giving us exactly 5 minutes to realize we could do better." "To 5 minutes?" everyone echoed. We drank cheap champagne in a warehouse that smelled like ambition and possibility. Somewhere across town, Gerald was probably sitting in his expensive house, wondering how it all went so wrong so fast. 5 minutes. That's all it took to end an empire and start a revolution, and I'd do it all over again.